The bedroom door opens at 2:17 inches the morning. I don't move. I keep my breathing slow, deep, steady. Through barely open eyelids, I watch my son's shadow cross the threshold. Declan stands in the doorway for what feels like forever, just watching me. Then he steps inside. His footsteps are soft against the hardwood floor. Closer, closer. He's right beside my bed now, so close I can smell his aftershave, the expensive kind I can't afford. The kind he shouldn't be able to afford either. My heart slams against my ribs, but I force my body to stay loose, relaxed. He reaches out. His hand touches my shoulder, shakes it. "Mom!" My pulse explodes in my ears, but I don't respond. I can't. I'm supposed to be unconscious. The pills he gave me tonight, the ones I pretended to swallow, the ones I spit into a tissue and hid in my dresser drawer, those pills are supposed to have me knocked out cold by now. He shakes harder. "Mum! Hey, Mum!" Just the deep, even breathing of someone who's been drugged into oblivion. After another moment, he pulls his hand back. Satisfied, he leaves my room. But his footsteps don't head toward his bedroom down the hall. They head toward the stairs. "Hi, viewers. Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is." I count to 30 in my head, each number stretching like taffy. Then I slip out of bed. My knees protest. 73-year-old knees don't move quietly, but I've lived in this house for 42 years. I know every board that creaks, every spot on the stairs that groans under weight. I press myself against the wall and move like smoke down the hallway. At the top of the staircase, I pause. Listen, soft sounds drift up from the living room. Careful sounds, deliberate sounds. I take the stairs slowly, keeping to the edges where the wood is solid. At the bottom, I flatten myself against the wall and peer around the corner. What I see makes every muscle in my body lock up. Declan is kneeling in front of my grandmother's roll-top desk. The bottom drawer is open, the one where I keep my important papers. Birth certificate, social security card, the deed to my house. He's holding up each document to the light of his phone's flashlight, taking pictures, one after another. Click, click, click. My mother's wedding ring comes next. Then the pearl necklace from my aunt. He photographs everything, methodical and calm, like he's done this before, like he's practiced. He moves to the filing cabinet beside my desk. My bank statements are in there. My retirement account information, investment records. Everything I worked 40 years to save. He goes through each folder, photographing every page. Then he pulls out his phone and makes a call. His voice is barely a whisper, but in the silent house, I hear every word. "I've got everything." Pause. "No, she's completely out. Those pills you got me work like a charm." My legs start to shake. I press harder against the wall to stay upright. I know. 6 months tops, you said." His laugh is soft, almost satisfied. "Yeah, I'm documenting everything. Bank accounts, property deed, the will, it's all in my name." The room tilts. I grab the doorframe to keep from falling. No. She doesn't suspect anything. She thinks I'm the devoted son. Another pause. Another laugh. "Look, once she's gone, we split it all. 350 for the house, about 180 in retirement and savings. After we pay your guy to make it look natural, we're still walking away with close to $500,000. I can't breathe. The air won't go into my lungs. Yeah, I'll keep increasing the dosage. You said it'll look like heart failure, right? Old woman, pre-existing condition, no one's going to question it. My son is planning to kill me. The boy I raised alone. The child I sacrificed everything for. He's going to murder me for money. And he's talking about it like it's a business deal. I don't know how long I stand there, frozen, listening to him discuss my death. It feels like hours. It's probably only minutes. Finally, Declan hangs up. He carefully returns every document to its proper place, closes the drawers, straightens the papers on my desk. Then he creeps back upstairs, past where I'm hiding in the shadows, and goes into his room. I wait until his door clicks shut. Then I make my way back upstairs, get into bed, and stare at the ceiling. Dawn breaks through my curtains. I don't close my eyes once. Let me tell you who I am, so you understand why what I heard shattered everything I thought I knew. My name is Meredith Calhoun. I'm 73 years old, and I raised my son alone from the time he was 6. His father, my husband, walked out on a Tuesday morning without warning, left a note on the kitchen table that said he needed to find himself. I never saw him again, never got child support, never got an apology. I worked double shifts at Henderson's Diner on Route 9, serving coffee and eggs to truckers and travelers. I ate cereal for dinner so Declan could have meat. I wore the same 3 outfits for years, rotating them, patching them, making them last so he could play Little League, so he could have decent shoes, so he could go on school field trips. I gave him everything, everything, and he grew up knowing it. He'd hug me after games, tell me I was the best mom in the world, promise he'd take care of me when he was older. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? 8 months ago, Declan showed up at my door with 2 suitcases and tears in his eyes. He said his wife, Rhiannon, needed space after their miscarriage, said he couldn't stay in their apartment, couldn't handle the empty nursery, couldn't face the grief alone. I opened my door without hesitation, made up the guest room with his old quilt from childhood, cooked pot roast that first Sunday, just like he loved. What mother wouldn't help her hurting son? But if I'd known what he was really planning, if I'd known the truth behind those tears, I would have slammed that door in his face and never looked back. The first week felt normal. I made his favourite meals pot roast on Sundays with carrots and potatoes, chicken and dumplings on Wednesdays, meatloaf on Fridays. We'd eat dinner together, and he'd tell me about his construction job, about the houses he was working on, about his plans to reconcile with Rhiannon once she was ready. I listened. I supported. I was being the mother I'd always been. Then the questions started. "What medications are you on, Mom?" We were washing dishes after dinner when he asked. I dried my hands on a towel and showed him the bottles lined up on the kitchen counter. Arthritis pills for my hands and knees, blood pressure medication, something to help me sleep. Nothing unusual for someone my age. He picked up each bottle, reading the labels carefully, nodding. "I just want to make sure you're taking care of yourself," he said. "You do so much for me. It's the least I can do." I was touched. A week later, he started bringing me my pills at night. "Let me help you, Mum." He'd arrange the capsules in a small dish beside my water glass, always around 9 o'clock, always with that same gentle smile. "You've been on your feet all day. Just relax." I'd swallow the pills, and he'd kiss my forehead before leaving my room. Sweet, thoughtful, loving, except within 15 minutes, I'd feel like I was sinking into quicksand. My limbs would go heavy, my thoughts would turn to fog, sleep would pull me under fast and hard, and I wouldn't surface until 10 or 11 the next morning. I'd wake up with my mouth dry as dust, my head thick and cloudy, my body feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. "You needed the rest, Mum," Declan would say when I'd stumble into the kitchen, confused about how I'd slept so long. "Don't worry about it." But I did worry. I started noticing things. Mail on the counter that I didn't remember opening. Papers on my desk that had been moved, reorganized. My jewelry box, the wooden one that belonged to my mother, was turned slightly one morning. The clasp on my purse wasn't fastened the way I always fastened it. I told myself I was being paranoid, old age making me forgetful. But the feeling wouldn't go away, that creeping sense that something was wrong. Then I found the bank statements. I keep careful records. I've had to my whole life 40 years of budgeting every penny, making sure there was enough for rent and food and Declan's school supplies. I may not have much, but what I have, I track. I know every dollar that comes in and goes out. 3 months ago, I found a withdrawal I didn't remember making. $500, cash, gone. I stared at the statement, trying to force my brain to remember. Had I taken out that money? For what? I asked Declan about it at breakfast. He looked up from his coffee, confused. "You took it out for groceries, Mum. Remember? The card reader at the store wasn't working, so you had to use cash. I didn't remember, but that was happening. More and more gaps in my memory. Conversations I couldn't recall, entire afternoons that felt fuzzy and distant. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had taken out that cash. The next month, another withdrawal. $800. The month after that, $1,200. Then, $1,500. I started keeping my statements in a locked drawer in my bedroom, stopped mentioning the money. But I watched, and I noticed Declan had new clothes, expensive sneakers, the kind that cost $200 that he couldn't afford on a construction worker's salary, designer jeans, a leather jacket. He came home late most nights, smelling like cologne and beer. His phone was glued to his hand constantly. He'd laugh at texts, step outside to take calls, disappear into his room for hours. And every single night, without fail, he brought me those pills. I'd swallow them, and the world would go dark. But the sleep wasn't restful anymore. It felt wrong, like being held underwater when you're trying to swim. I'd wake up exhausted, my body aching, my thoughts moving through molasses. Last week, something happened that changed everything. I was in the bathroom getting ready for bed when I dropped one of my pill bottles. The blue capsules scattered across the tile floor, rolling under the sink, bouncing against the bathtub. I bent down to pick them up, my knees cracking, my back complaining. As I gathered them, I noticed something. The capsules Declan had been bringing me. The ones sitting in the little dish on my nightstand, they looked similar to these, but not quite the same. The colour was slightly different, deeper, darker. The size was a fraction larger. My hands started shaking so badly, I almost dropped the pills again. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, heart pounding, and compared them. The pills from my prescription bottle and the pills Declan had given me, they weren't the same. They weren't the same. My son was giving me something that wasn't my medication. But what? And why? I thought about everything. The missing money, the strange, heavy sleep, the gaps in my memory, the way he'd been asking questions about my house. Was it paid off? What was it worth? Did I have a will? I'd answered him honestly, like a fool. Yes, the house was paid off. Yes, it was worth about $350,000. That's what the realtor said when I got it appraised last year. Yes, I had a will. I'd shown it to him 6 months ago, when he'd asked about my plans for the future. Everything goes to him. Of course. He's my son. My only family. He'd hugged me when I showed him the will, told me he hoped I'd live forever. Said he never wanted to lose me. But sitting in that bathroom, holding 2 different pills in my trembling hands, I realized something that made my stomach turn. My son was drugging me, and I needed to know why. I'm not a stupid woman. I've survived a deadbeat husband who abandoned his family. I raised a child alone while working 2 jobs. I kept my head above water for 7 decades through sheer will and determination. I know when something isn't right, and I know when I'm in danger. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be a victim. Not of anyone, not even my own son. When Declan came into my room at 9 o'clock with that little dish of pills, I smiled at him, thanked him, put the pills in my mouth, took a sip of water, and made the motion of swallowing. But I didn't swallow the pills. I held them under my tongue, tucked them against my cheek. Years of taking vitamins and medications have taught me the difference between pills going down and water going down. Declan watched me for a moment, like he always did. Then he leaned down and kissed my forehead. "Sleep well, Mum." "I will, sweetheart. Thank you." He closed the door behind him. I waited until his footsteps faded down the hall. Then I spit the pills into my hand and stared at them. 3 capsules, dark blue, unmarked. I wrapped them in a tissue and hid them in my dresser drawer, in the back, behind my winter scarves. Then I lay in bed and waited. I kept my breathing slow and deep, the way it sounds when I'm sleeping. My heart was racing so fast I thought it might burst right through my chest, but I forced myself to stay still, to keep my eyes closed, to listen. The house settled into its nighttime silence, the creak of old wood contracting in the cool air, the hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the distant sound of a car passing on the street outside. I waited. Every minute felt like an hour. At 2:17 inches the morning, I heard my bedroom door open. I didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't let my breathing change even slightly. Through barely open eyelids, I saw Declan's silhouette in the doorway. He stood there, watching, just watching. Then he crossed the room toward my bed. My entire body wanted to tense up, to react, but I forced myself to stay limp, loose, unconscious. He was standing right beside me now, so close I could feel the warmth of his body, smell his aftershave, hear his breathing. He reached out and touched my shoulder, shook it gently. "Mum?" I didn't respond. I kept my breathing deep and even, my body completely relaxed. He shook harder. "Mum. Hey, Mum." Nothing. I gave him nothing. I was supposed to be drugged into oblivion. Whatever he'd been giving me kept me under, unresponsive, dead to the world. I had to play it perfectly. After what felt like forever, Declan seemed satisfied. He pulled his hand back and turned away from the bed, but he didn't leave the room and go back to his bedroom like I expected. His footsteps headed toward my door, then out into the hallway, then toward the stairs. I counted to 30, each second stretching, each number a small eternity. Then I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could. My knees protested. 73-year-old joints don't cooperate in the middle of the night, but I'd lived in this house for 42 years. I knew it better than I knew my own face. I knew which floorboards creaked under weight, which spots on the stairs groaned when you stepped on them, which parts of the hallway were solid and silent. I moved to my bedroom door and opened it just a crack. The hallway was dark. Downstairs, I could hear soft sounds, careful sounds. I stepped into the hallway, pressing myself against the wall, and made my way to the staircase. I took the stairs slowly, keeping to the edges where the wood was solid. At the bottom, I paused, listened. The sounds were coming from the living room. I pressed myself flat against the wall and peered around the corner. What I saw made my blood freeze in my veins. Declan was kneeling in front of my desk, my grandmother's antique roll-top desk that I'd inherited when she passed. He'd pulled out the bottom drawer, the one where I kept my important papers. Every document was laid out on the floor beside him. Birth certificate, social security card, marriage certificate, divorce papers, the deed to my house, my will. He was photographing everything with his phone, holding each document up to the light from his phone's flashlight. Click, click, click. When he finished with the papers, he moved to my jewelry box on the side table. My mother's wedding ring, the only thing I had left of her. The pearl necklace my aunt left me when she died. He photographed those too, but he didn't stop there. He stood up and moved to the small filing cabinet beside my desk. That's where I kept my financial records, bank statements, investment accounts, retirement savings information, every penny I'd managed to scrape together over 40 years of work. Declan was going through every folder, every statement, photographing each one with the same calm, methodical precision. Like he'd done this before, like he'd practiced. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. He kept his voice low, barely above a whisper. But in the silent house, I could hear every single word. "Yeah, it's me. I've got everything." A pause. Someone talking on the other end. "No, she's completely out. Those pills you got me work like a charm." My legs started trembling. I grabbed the door frame to steady myself. I know. 6 months tops, you said. We're right on schedule." He was quiet for a moment, listening. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. It was soft, but I heard it clearly. "Yeah, I'm documenting everything. Bank accounts, property deed, the will. It's all in my name already." She changed it 6 months ago when I asked. The room started spinning. I pressed my hand against the wall to keep from falling. No, she doesn't suspect anything. She thinks I'm the devoted son taking care of his grieving mother. It's perfect. Another pause. Look, once she's gone, we split it all. 350 for the house, about 180 in retirement and savings. After we pay your guy to make it look natural, we're still walking away with close to $500,000. I couldn't breathe. The air wouldn't go into my lungs. My chest felt like someone had wrapped it in steel bands. Yeah, I'll keep increasing the dosage like we planned. You said it'll look like heart failure, right? Old woman, pre-existing condition, high blood pressure. No one's gonna question it. My son was planning to kill me. My baby boy. The child I'd carried for 9 months. The boy I'd rocked to sleep every night for years. The kid I'd taught to ride a bike, to tie his shoes, to stand up for himself. He was going to murder me. For money. For my house. For everything I'd worked my entire life to build. And he had a partner. Someone who'd supplied the drugs. Someone who'd told him exactly how to do it. Someone who was going to help him make my death look like natural causes. Then, they'd split everything I owned. I don't know how long I stood there in the shadows, listening to my son discuss my murder like it was a business transaction. My legs were shaking so badly I thought they might give out. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it from across the room. Finally, Declan hung up the phone. He took his time putting everything back. Every document returned to its proper place. Every folder restacked in the filing cabinet. The jewelry box closed and positioned exactly where it had been. He was careful, methodical, making sure nothing looked disturbed. Then he stood up, stretched, and crept back toward the stairs. I barely had time to press myself into the dark corner behind the coat rack. He walked right past me, so close I could have reached out and touched him. He went upstairs, and I heard his bedroom door close. I waited, counted to 100 this time, just to be sure. Then I made my way back upstairs, moving like a ghost through my own house. I got back into bed and stared at the ceiling. Dawn broke through my curtains, pale grey light turning to pink, then gold. I didn't close my eyes once. My mind was racing, replaying everything I'd heard. 350,000 for the house, 180,000 in retirement and savings. Your guy who would make it look natural. Heart failure. No one would question it. 6 months tops. Increasing the dosage. My son wanted me dead. But here's what Declan didn't know. Here's what he'd forgotten in all his careful planning. I'm not just a weak old woman he can drug into an early grave. I'm a survivor. I survived poverty. I survived abandonment. I survived 40 years of back-breaking work, of making every penny stretch, of fighting for everything I had, and I sure wasn't going to let my own son rob me of the life I'd built. I spent that entire day making phone calls, quiet ones. From my bedroom while Declan was supposedly at work. I called my lawyer first, then my doctor, then my bank, and then I called someone else. Someone Declan would never expect me to know. Someone who owed me a favor from years ago. Someone who believed me when I explained what was happening. That night, when Declan brought me my pills at 9 o'clock, I smiled at him, thanked him, put them in my mouth and pretended to swallow. Just like the night before, I lay in bed and waited for him to come check on me. Waited for 17 inches the morning. But this time, I wasn't going to just watch and listen. This time, I wasn't alone in this house. At exactly 2:17, my bedroom door opened. Declan stood in the doorway, watching me. I kept my breathing deep and steady. He crossed to my bed and shook my shoulder. Mum? Nothing. I stayed completely still. Satisfied, he left the room and headed downstairs. I counted to 30, then slipped out of bed. But I didn't follow him this time. I stayed at the top of the stairs and waited. Downstairs, I heard Declan moving around in the living room, opening drawers, the soft click of his phone camera, then his voice, low and careful, making that same phone call. Yeah, it's me. Everything's going according to plan. That's when the lights snapped on. Every single light in the living room. Declan's voice cut off mid-sentence. I heard him gasp. What the? Declan Calhoun, don't move. The voice was deep, authoritative, and very much not mine. I started down the stairs slowly, my hand gripping the railing. When I reached the bottom and looked into the living room, I saw exactly what I'd arranged. 2 police officers stood in my living room, Detective Morrison, the son of my old friend Patricia from the diner, and Officer Chen. Both in uniform, both with their hands resting on their belts, and Declan, frozen in front of my desk, my bank statements in one hand and his phone in the other. His face went through about 6 different expressions in 3 seconds. Shock. Confusion, then recognition when he saw me standing in the doorway, then fear. Then anger, then back to fear. Mom! What? I can explain. Explain what, Declan? My voice was steady, stronger than I'd expected. Explain how you've been poisoning me for months. Explain how you planned to kill me for my house and my savings. Explain how you thought I was too old and stupid to notice. I didn't. Mrs. Calhoun has been recording everything for the past 2 nights, Detective Morrison said. His voice was calm but cold. We have you on tape photographing her private documents. We have you on tape making phone calls about her death. We have you on tape discussing how to make her murder look like natural causes. Declan's face went white. Actually white. Like all the blood drained straight out. The pills you've been giving your mother? Officer Chen held up a small evidence bag. Inside were the 3 capsules I'd spit out and saved. We had them tested this morning. Sedatives mixed with beta blockers. Given to someone with high blood pressure, in increasing doses over time, they would have caused heart failure. Just like you planned. No. Declan was shaking his head, backing up against my desk. No, this isn't. Mum, please. I'm your son. You were my son, I said quietly. My son wouldn't drug me. My son wouldn't steal from me. My son wouldn't plot to murder me for money. But I didn't. We also picked up your accomplice about an hour ago, Detective Morrison interrupted. Rhiannon Calhoun, your wife, who works as a pharmacy technician at Walgreens on 5th Street, who has access to medications, who helped you plan this whole thing. Declan's eyes went even wider. If that was possible, there was no miscarriage, was there? I stepped further into the room. There was no separation. You 2 planned this together from the start. You moved in here to drug me, to document my assets, to get me to change my will, and then you were going to kill me and split everything. Mrs. Calhoun, Mom, please. I can explain. Declan Calhoun, you're under arrest for attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, and theft. Detective Morrison pulled out his handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. The words kept going, but I stopped listening. I watched them put the handcuffs on my son, watched him struggle, watched him start to cry. Mom, please. I'm your son. How could you do this to me? That's what broke through the numbness. Those words. How could I do this to him? I stepped forward, looked him right in the eyes. How could I? How could you? My voice cracked, but I didn't care anymore. I gave you everything. My whole life. I gave you everything. I worked myself to the bone so you could have a childhood, so you could go to college, so you could have a better life than I did. And you repaid me by planning to murder me? I didn't mean, yes, you did. You meant every bit of it. You and Rhiannon. You thought I was just a weak old woman you could drug and rob and kill. You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I wouldn't fight back. Tears were running down his face now, but I couldn't tell if they were real or just another performance. Please, Mum, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to call on my birthday. A mistake is showing up late to dinner. This wasn't a mistake. This was attempted murder. This was you deciding my life was worth less than money. They started leading him toward the front door. He was still protesting, still crying, still begging me to help him. I stood in my living room and watched them take him away. Officer Chen stayed behind for a few minutes to get my statement, to make sure I was okay, to tell me that Rhiannon had already confessed to everything, how they'd planned it for over a year, how they'd researched which medications would work, how they'd calculated exactly how long it would take and how much I was worth. They were looking at 25 years minimum, Officer Chen said. Attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, theft. The DA's going to throw the book at them. I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. After they left, I sat in my living room as the sun came up. Just sat there in my grandmother's old chair, looking at the desk where Declan had been kneeling, at the filing cabinet where he'd been stealing my information, at the jewelry box that held my mother's ring. I didn't cry. Not then. The tears would come later, in waves, when I finally let myself feel everything. But right now, I just felt empty and tired. So incredibly tired. 1 week later, I sat in my lawyer's office and signed a new will. Everything was being left to the women's shelter, downtown, to youth programs that helped kids from single-parent homes, to organizations that supported people who were struggling to make ends meet. Nothing to Declan, nothing to Rhiannon. They'd get nothing from me but the consequences of their choices. My house went on the market 2 weeks after that. I couldn't stay there anymore. Every room held memories that had turned poisonous. Every corner reminded me of the son I thought I had, the son who'd never really existed. I moved into a smaller condo across town. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a little balcony that got morning sun. More than enough. The trial happened 3 months later. I had to testify. Had to sit in that courtroom and look at Declan while I told everyone what he'd done. What he'd planned to do. Rhiannon testified too, trying to save herself by blaming everything on Declan. He tried to blame everything on her. Neither of them took responsibility. Neither of them apologized. Not really. They got 25 years each. Attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, theft, conspiracy. The judge said it was one of the most calculated cases of elder abuse he'd ever seen. I sat in the courtroom and listened to the sentence and felt nothing. Just that same hollow emptiness. I see him sometimes in my mind. Not the Declan who tried to kill me, the little boy who used to run to me after school, who'd wrap his arms around my waist and tell me about his day, who'd help me fold laundry and make dinner. That little boy is gone. Maybe he never existed the way I remember. Maybe I built him up in my memory to be something he wasn't. Or maybe somewhere along the way, that little boy turned into someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could look at his mother and see only dollar signs. It's been 6 months now. 6 months since that night I pretended to swallow those pills. 6 months since I followed him downstairs and heard him planning my death. I still have trouble sleeping sometimes. Still wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, checking to make sure my door is locked. Still think about what would have happened if I hadn't noticed those pills were different. If I hadn't stopped swallowing them. How much longer would I have lasted? Another month? 2? Would anyone have questioned it when my heart finally gave out? Would anyone have suspected that the devoted son who'd moved home to take care of his aging mother had actually murdered her? Probably not. That's what makes it so terrifying. He almost got away with it. But he didn't. Because I fought back. Because I refused to be a victim. Because even at 73 years old, even after being drugged and stolen from and betrayed by my own child, I was still strong enough to survive. I think about the other elderly people out there. The ones being taken advantage of by family members they trust. The ones having their medications switched or their bank accounts drained. The ones who feel something's wrong but don't know what to do about it. I hope they find their strength too. I hope they fight back. My life looks different now. Smaller. Quieter. But it's mine. Fully mine. And there's something powerful about that. About waking up every morning in my little condo, making my coffee, sitting on my balcony, and knowing that I'm safe. That no one is plotting against me. That no one is trying to take what's mine. Declan will spend the next decades in prison. thinking about the mother he tried to kill, thinking about the inheritance he'll never get, thinking about all the ways he underestimated the woman who raised him. And me? I'm living, finally, truly living. Not just surviving, but actually living my life on my own terms. The terms I should have had all along. If you've ever trusted someone with your whole heart, only to have them betray you in the worst possible way, you're not alone, and your survival matters. To anyone out there who's being taken advantage of by family, remember this. Blood doesn't excuse betrayal. You deserve safety. You deserve respect. And you have every right to protect yourself, no matter who's hurting you. What's the biggest lesson you're taking from Meredith's story? And if you were in her situation, would you have done the same thing or handled it differently? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. Don't stop here. Click the next video on your screen right now and watch another powerful story from our channel. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on so you never miss a story, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one.